The phone vibrated in my pocket. Without thinking, I pulled it out and answered. "Hello." The sound of Jake's voice on the other end made my jaw tighten. "Mark." Natalie told Caroline. She told her everything. Like it was nothing. The world stopped. My wife hadn't mixed up the flight dates. She hadn't left me behind by accident. She had cut me out on purpose. For 8 years, I believed Natalie and I were inseparable. We weren't the perfect couple, far from it, but we balanced each other out, or at least that's what I thought. I'm Mark, 41 years old, an architect in Mexico City. Detail-oriented and organized to a fault, traits that made me excel in my career but, as it turns out, blinded me in my marriage. When Natalie suggested a trip to Hawaii, I saw it as a lifeline. Lately, she'd been distant, lost in her own world. I thought this trip would help us reconnect. But then something happened, something I couldn't explain. 3 days before the date I had marked down, I woke up to a text message from her. "Babe, I'm so sorry. I messed up the dates. The flight was last night. I had to go without you." My brain struggled to process her words. How was that possible? I had confirmed the date with her weeks ago. I tried calling immediately, but she didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the phone screen, a knot forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I told myself it was just a mistake. Maybe Natalie really had mixed up the dates. Maybe it was my fault for not double-checking beforehand. But the doubt clung to me like a splinter under my skin, refusing to let go. Then, I got an unexpected message. It was from Jake, a mutual friend of ours and his wife, Caroline. Jake. "Hey Mark, how's the trip going?" My stomach twisted. I didn't go. There was a mix-up with the dates. 3 dots appeared on the screen. He was typing. Then he stopped. Then started again. My heart pounded in the silence before the message popped up. Jake. Wait, really? That's weird. Caroline showed me a picture of Natalie on the beach with her group. I was surprised not to see you there. I figured you were the one taking the picture. I froze. No. Jake. Oh man. There wasn't a ticket for you? No. Jake. That makes no sense. Caroline said Natalie was super excited about the trip. And she left you behind? My jaw clenched. Natalie hadn't left me behind by accident. She had planned this. And if she didn't want me there had to be a reason. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to stay calm. Hey, do you have that picture? Jake. No, Caroline just saw it on her phone. But I can ask her to pull it up again. Don't bother, I muttered to myself as I hung up. I didn't need the picture. I already knew what I'd find. Instead, I logged into our joint bank account and started combing through the transactions. There it was, the resort payment, the flights, the expensive dinners. But the real kicker? 2 plane tickets. One under Natalie's name. The other, someone else's. Everything clicked into place. The distance, the coldness, the trip without me. Natalie didn't want to save our marriage. She wanted to get rid of me. But when she got back, she'd realize it wasn't that easy. The days passed in deceptive calm. While Natalie enjoyed her tropical paradise with her mystery companion, I stayed busy preparing for her downfall. I didn't call. I didn't text to confront her. I let her keep thinking she had fooled me. Meanwhile, I gathered everything I needed. Copies of bank transactions, flight records, and screenshots of our conversations, including the message where she accidentally left me behind. No room for excuses. No room for lies. Then, I went to see my lawyer. How do you want to proceed, Mark? He asked, flipping through the documents I handed him. I took a moment before answering. My voice was steady when I finally spoke. I want her to lose everything. He nodded calmly. We can make this work in your favor. The house is under your name, right? Yeah. And I control the joint account. Natalie only has access to limited funds. Good. We can freeze any large withdrawals before she gets back. The last thing you need is for her to drain the money and leave you with nothing. I crossed my arms, a mix of rage and cold satisfaction settling in my chest. Do it. And I want the divorce papers ready when she lands. That same afternoon, I followed my lawyer's advice to the letter. I cut off Natalie's access to our joint accounts, changed the locks on the house, and blocked any transactions she might try to make with my cards. By the time she set foot back in the city, her little fantasy would be over, and reality would hit her like a brick wall. 2 days had passed since Natalie's return. She knew something was off. She had tried to make purchases with our joint card and couldn't. She had also discovered that the lock on the house had been changed. She had sent me messages, tried calling me, even emailed me in a pitiful tone, saying we needed to talk. I ignored her. Then my phone rang. Jake. Mark, I need to talk to you. Go ahead. His tone was serious, almost tense. I know you already suspected that Natalie left you out of the trip on purpose. But there's more. Something Caroline told me that I think you need to know. I leaned on the table, sensing that whatever was coming next wasn't going to be good. Tell me. Jake sighed on the other end, hesitating for just a second before dropping the final blow. Mark, the guy she went with? He wasn't just some stranger. You know him. My grip on the phone tightened. Who is it? A pause. Then Jake spoke, and my world collapsed all over again. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I gripped it tighter, my knuckles turning white. Jake's voice on the other end was steady, yet filled with an undercurrent of unease. Natalie cheated on you, Mark. The words hit like a freight train, but I refused to flinch. Instead, I clenched my jaw and forced my breathing to remain even. How do you know? Jake hesitated for just a second before answering. Because she told Caroline herself. She talked about it like it was nothing, just another detail from her Hawaii trip. Caroline was in shock. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. But Natalie, she just said it like it didn't even matter. Like you didn't matter. Silence stretched between us as my heart pounded against my ribcage. I could feel my blood running hot, my muscles tightening with restrained fury. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly through my nose, grounding myself before speaking. Mark, I know this is a tricky situation, Jake continued, his voice softer now. I know it's not my place to get involved in someone else's relationship, but I couldn't keep this from you. You don't deserve this. I took another deep breath, my chest rising and falling with each controlled inhale. Thanks for telling me, Jake. Are you okay? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only the cold satisfaction of knowing my suspicions had been right. Yeah. And trust me, this just makes executing my plans even easier. I ended the call and set my phone down, my gaze shifting to the thick envelope resting on the table in front of me. Divorce papers. Signed and ready. I had prepared for this moment, knowing deep down that Natalie had already checked out of our marriage long before I had proof. And now, it was my turn to make sure she faced the consequences of her betrayal. The messages started flooding in soon after. Mark, what's going on? I can't access the accounts. Mark, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Please don't ignore me. Each message swung between confusion and desperation, but I ignored them all. She had lost the right to ask anything of me. That night, my phone buzzed with an alert from the security system. A movement detected at the front door. Just as I expected. By the time I walked outside, Natalie was standing there in the dim glow of the porch light, her suitcase at her feet. Her brow was furrowed, her eyes burning with a mixture of anger and confusion. She looked up at me, her lips parting slightly before she spoke. Why can't I get in? She demanded. I crossed my arms over my chest, letting the coldness in my stare settle into her. Because you don't live here anymore, Natalie. Her breath hitched. What are you talking about? This is my house too. I shook my head slowly, relishing the look of realization dawning in her eyes. No. Natalie, the house is in my name, and you are no longer welcome here. She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could utter another excuse, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. I placed it firmly in her hands. Her eyes flicked down, scanning the bold letters at the top of the document. Divorce. Her body stiffened. Mark, this is insane. You can't just do this out of nowhere. I let out a dry laugh, devoid of any humor. Out of nowhere. Let me make something clear, Natalie. I know what you did in Hawaii. I know why you left me behind. I know exactly who you were with. And I know you didn't even care enough to hide it properly. Her face drained of color. No, it's not like that. Isn't it? I took a step forward, watching her squirm under my gaze. Then why did you tell Caroline everything? She gasped, her body swaying slightly as if her legs were struggling to hold her up. Caroline. I nodded, my expression unwavering. Yeah. You talked to her like it was no big deal. Like our marriage meant so little to you that you could brag about your affair. But unlike you, Caroline isn't disloyal. She told Jake and he told me. Natalie sucked in a sharp breath, her lips trembling. Ma, no. I cut her off with a sharp tone. I don't want to hear it. No excuses. No lies. No second chances. You dug your own grave. Her breathing grew ragged, her eyes wide with real panic now. Please, we can fix this. It was a mistake. I let out a hollow chuckle. Oh, now it's a mistake? Because you got caught? Didn't seem like you were regretting it too much on the beach with him. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. You don't have to do this like this. I met her gaze, my resolve unshaken. Yes, I do. Because I deserve better. And now that I've cut you out, I'm finally going to find it. With that, I turned and stepped back into the house, closing the door behind me with a firm finality. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, my life was mine again.